So this video is not going to just regurgitate what you should have already read, but I'm going to point out really important mistakes that students make with respect to this document and what is requested. I want you to keep in mind how well you did on the foundational writing assignment, test 3 from Unit 1. How well did you follow the videos for that assignment and the written instructions? Here you're going to get another chance to demonstrate that you're able to manifest intellectual perseverance, to harness all of your psychological and physiological resources to comprehend, navigate, and execute a complex cognitive task. So as you know, I do have unique writing assignments. As far as I know, many of the assignments that you do in this class are assignments that I have invented. So you've got to remember that while you might have learned many important and useful things in other classes about writing and your composition classes, I have unique writing assignments, and the instructions and directions that I give you override anything that you've learned in your other classes. So always make sure that you're using the specific instruction and details that I gave you or that I give you for my writing assignments. So I'm not going to reread this. You should have already read this. If you have not read it, please read it. I am going to give you a warning here that when it comes to step 2, notice that I say you have to click on reply on your peer's thread, and I said I should see, notice here it says click on your selected peer's thread, copy your peer's arguments, like copy paste, and then click on reply in your peer's thread. I should see 2 paragraphs, your selected peer's argument and then your response to it below it. For some reason, I'd say 20 to 30% of the students in a given section, all they do is they give me their response to the student, but they totally skip the part where I say include your peer's original response as a separate paragraph before you construct your own paragraph-long response. Because of the grading window that I use within Blackboard, I cannot see what your peer's original argument was when I go through my interface on Blackboard. I'd have to open up 2 windows, and I don't like to do that. So make sure that you do follow step 2D here. Otherwise, you're only going to get half of the points possible for this assignment, and I might not give you any feedback because I'm giving you instructions on what you need to do to make it easier for me to grade, and I don't feel that I should have to go and open up more windows and click on more things because you didn't do your part to make grading easier for me. So keep that in mind, that if you don't follow this completely, that you may get at best a 50 for this assignment, and you may not get any feedback for this assignment. So make sure you do your part to make sure that I have everything I need in one window and to grade. And the way that you do that is you do this here, okay? Let's go over some other mistakes and a requirement, or something that I'm going to actually make a requirement that is not stated as a requirement in writing. So of course, one thing I want you to know is that this is a mandatory template. This comprises the second paragraph that I see in your response. If you have not done so, go ahead and read through this very carefully, because I'm not going to read through it here in the video, but I am going to talk about it, and you'll have a better understanding of what I'm talking about if you've read this or if you reread this for yourself. So another mistake that some students make is they do not take this literally. Here I say start your paragraph by quoting a claim you have decided to focus on from your peer's response. I'm not sure what goes through some students' heads, but here I'm clearly saying how you start your paragraph, hence your first sentence. So I should see here that, or I should see in your first paragraph that you're showing attention explicitly and directly to how I tell you to start that paragraph. Notice how I then say next, present a well-formulated, well-written question for your peer to address. This part I really don't get, but sometimes I will get student submissions where there's not a single question, and my thinking is, what I'm wondering is, do some students just click on the threads and decide or assume based on past experience that if something looks like a discussion board that they worked on in the past, that basically what I'm doing with the discussion boards is the same thing that other professors have done with discussion boards. And I think that's the case because sometimes students just kind of respond and say what they agree or disagree with, and that's not at all what this is about. As you can see from the title, it says contextualize and formulate what? A good question. This says contextualize and explain the significance of a question that you generate, the question that you come up with, So I'm emphasizing that because, again, I have seen responses where students don't ask a single question. Another thing, questions are supposed to have question marks at the end of at the end of a given sentence, the one that's supposed to elicit information from a peer. If you do not have a question mark at the end of the sentence, then I am not going to count your paragraph as having a question. I have had students start off a sentence with a word that seems like they're going to ask a question, like what or how, but sometimes students use that word to make a statement even though they do so incorrectly. So I must see a question, and the question comes after this part right here. Okay, so that's another warning that I'm iterating. Now, I have decided to make something in here that's a recommendation or suggestion a requirement. So really continue to take note of what I say. So here I say that you have to explain to your peer why you think it's important for him or to address the question. So here I say optional approved sources, and actually I'm going to make this mandatory. And this part I am going to go over in a little bit of detail. So notice that I said you might find it helpful to cite something relevant from Chapter 2 on the Smart Book Reading on Epistemology, since the argument topic is of interest to epistemologists. So what I want to say here is that I do expect you, after the quote, after you generate your question, when you're explaining why it is important for your peer to answer the question, I want you to quote something from Chapter 2. I would recommend focusing on the introductory section. So just the introductory section that Lawhead gives you. So for example, you could look at the definition for knowledge. Might you be able to use that? Or maybe some questions or some concerns that Lawhead brings up, or maybe look at the different theories or look at the different statements. But I want you to explain to your peer why it is important for your peer to answer your question. And I want you to quote something from Chapter 2. In other words, why is it of importance from the standpoint of epistemology for your peer to answer that question? Now, I do want to give you a bit of coaching here. I'm going to turn this around. Okay, give me 1 second to adjust my screen here. Okay, so the argument that you are going to be looking at and responding to with respect to your peer, remember that the question was, is it possible to prove that any of the conflicting claims about mask wearing are true? So think about the definition for knowledge. Remember that knowledge was defined as justified true belief. When it comes to your peer's conclusion, no matter what it was, they're going to have some phrase of the question. I do or don't think it's possible to prove any claims about mask wearing are true, or they're going to say it's not rational for themselves to take a definite stance on whether we can prove that any claims about mask wearing are true. When it comes to the definition of knowledge, I want you to keep in mind that when it comes to whatever your peer has in their first sentence, the word prove goes with the word justify in the classical definition for knowledge that you learned about and were tested on. Belief, of course, goes with claims. So we have justified belief from the official definition for knowledge from the reading for Unit 2, and justified belief goes with proven claims or prove claims from the question or the first sentence in your peer's question. And then true, of course, that's another word from the definition that you got from the reading, but the word true is also part of your peer's first statement. So justified true belief goes with prove a belief or prove a claim is true. All right, so keep that in mind, that this argument, this topic that I brought up for you with respect to item 1 of the foundational writing assignment was meant to excavate your epistemological presuppositions about knowledge and whether we can prove any claims are true. In other words, can we ever properly and adequately justify that a given claim or belief is true? Claims or beliefs about mask wearing and whether we can justify any of those claims are true is an example of a much larger problem that some epistemologists are concerned with, as you learned about. Okay, so let me turn this back around. All right, so so make sure that you keep in mind what the point of your peer's argument is. If they took a definite stance, look at the wording. What did they say? I do or do not think it's possible to prove that any claims are true? What are the important concepts? Prove, claim, true. If your peer said it's not rational, of course it's important to know that why they think it's not rational. But again, they're going to talk to us about why it's not rational with respect to what? Deciding whether something can be proved, or whether a claim can be proven as true. So keep in mind the conclusion that your peer was arguing for, that it's an epistemological conclusion, and that it has epistemological concepts in it. Now, plagiarism warning, I'm going to let you make sure that you pay attention to this. You must, whether you're paraphrasing or quoting, you can do either one, you must give me the page number for whatever line you pull from the reading. And all I need is one quote. Just give me one sentence at most from the book that is quoted. I don't want a lot of quoting. And remember, do not answer your peer's question. So as you guys can hear, I'm really intense right now. I'm really intense. I'm really direct, but it's not because I'm upset or what would I be upset about? Nothing. But it's because I want you guys to do well, and I'm like a coach. I'm like a coach or a cheerleader on the sidelines, and I know what I'm looking for, or I know what Dr. Carrillo's looking for. Just don't even think of me as Dr. Carrillo right now. Think of me as like a tutor, and I know Dr. Carrillo really well. I want you guys to impress Dr. Carrillo. I want you guys to succeed. And so what you're seeing right now is you're seeing my passion, my care, my concern. You can do this. And so that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys, okay? So please just see this as a positive, constructive video where I'm just really trying to make sure that you understand mistakes and issues you can run into and what it is that I want you to do. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else I want to cover on this page. Okay, so this just tells you how you can get back into the reading. Here's another warning. So here I tell you that it says using one of the question strategy templates below ensures that you are using the template on page 1. So this is the template on page 1, but don't forget the earlier warning. This is going to constitute a paragraph, but don't forget that there will be 2 paragraphs because you're going to copy and paste your peer's original argument. Now, if you want, you can decide to use one of these as a template. Like literally, you can just copy and paste this and literally plug in as appropriate. Now, of course, you have to use your current writing skills and ability to construct sentences and create a coherent paragraph. So you have to use this as a template in an intelligent way. But still, I'm just saying that if you use this as your template, you don't have to keep going back up to this because this fulfills doing this. So any of these do, right? Any of these question strategies. But what these do not do is remind you of what? That you do need to now, this is no longer a suggestion, it's a requirement that you explain why it's important for your peer to answer your question and that you give an epistemological explanation. Hence, you quote from the book and let the student know. But I will give you 5 extra points on this assignment if you make use of one of these question strategies. You could even tell your peer, hey, I'm going to use a concept-focused question strategy to generate a question for you. And you could put that anywhere in your paragraph where you make an explicit statement about what kind of a question you're giving them. You can do it, I'll let you put that in at the very beginning, and then you can quote what your peer had to say, or you could put it in between, or you can tell them what kind of a question strategy you're going to use between here and here. Or after you give the question, you can tell them what kind of a question strategy you think you've used, or at the very end, you can tell them what kind of a question strategy you used. So when I talk about question strategies, I am talking about these templates, if you will, on pages 2 or 3. So this is a concept-focused question, assumption-focused questions, justification adequacy-focused questions. So you can see that I've given you many templates that would fulfill the main template given to you on page 1 for the paragraph that I'm looking for. Make sure that if you use the coherence focused questions that you read through the warnings very carefully, especially if you've chosen a peer who said it's not rational for them to take a definite position on whether or not they think that any claims about mask wearing can be proven true. Now, I did also give you, and by the way, I think another mistake that some students make in their thinking is some people go straight to pages 2 and 3 And so they completely forget or ignore steps 2A through steps 2D, okay? So here, these are just examples of your paragraph where you contextualize, generate, and explain the significance of your question. These do not include examples of copying and pasting your peer's argument above said contextualized question generation. Here are 3 examples that I gave you, like what it would look like to use one of the templates. So these are all examples of the templates that I just went over on pages 2 and 3. They pull pretty much directly from them, and in doing so, the main template on page 1 is met. If you insert numbers, I will give you extra credit. These numbers align with the steps either within the particular questioning strategy template, so you could add the numbers. So basically it's like part 1, part 2, part 3. The numbers are not for sentences. The numbers are for these parts or elements of the moves I want you to make in the paragraph. Do keep in mind that this is a paragraph, so let me give you another warning. So what some students will do, or the takeaway that they will get from the numbering is, oh, well, I'm just going to number my sentences or statements, and then they just give me like a list, like a grocery list, ignoring that this is supposed to be a coherent piece of thinking, coherent paragraph. So you can't just give me a list of sentences or statements. The numbers are not for the statements. The numbers aren't for the sentences. The numbers are to say, hey, I've got element 1 of this writing assignment in my paragraph. I've got element 2. I've got element 3. All right, so I think that's all I want to say to you. This video is exactly as long as I thought it would be, 17 minutes.